You're listening to Tonebenders Sound Design Podcast, presented by Sound Ideas. Sound Ideas' highly anticipated mid-year sale has been extended for a limited time. Unlock 50% off on thousands of premium recordings from epic cinematic sounds to authentic ambiances. They're ideal for any creative project. This applies to all Sound Ideas proprietary libraries. With over 45 years of experience, Sound Ideas delivers audio trusted by professionals worldwide. Head over to soundideas.com to learn more. Hello and welcome to Tonebenders. My name is Tim Muirhead. Big thanks for picking to listen to Tonebenders today. You're going to be glad you did because I have the supervising sound editors behind two very different projects sitting together to talk about how these projects both came together. First up, we have Nicholas Renbeck, who's previously been on Tonebenders to talk about HBO's The Night Of, way back in episode 73. And then we had him back on to talk about Succession in episode 276. And now he's joining us again today to talk about his work on an amazing show, The Righteous Gemstones. It's great to talk to you again, Nick.
It's great to be back. Thanks so much, Tim. Appreciate it.
Joining Nick and I today, we have Daniel Timmons. Somehow Dan has not been on Tonebenders before, despite working on some amazing projects, like the fantastic sounding film from last year, Nickel Boys. Dan has also carved out a distinct reputation in sound for documentaries. He won an Emmy last year for his Jim Henson Idea Man work and is nominated again this year for Pee-wee himself. Welcome to the show, Dan. It's fantastic to meet you.
It's a pleasure to be here for my very first time.
At first thought, these two projects, The Righteous Gemstones and Pee-wee himself, they don't really have a lot in common, but they actually do because they both have a lot of heart in them. And they both have kind of an absurdist character at the heart of it. Pee-wee is, Paul Reubens is obviously not a character, he's a real person. I guess Pee-wee is the character, Paul Reubens is the real person. But maybe we can have you both talk about your relationship to these shows and the people that populate them. Nick, you've been on Gemstones for 4 seasons. Do you want to kind of tell us how you got on the show and how the show has evolved from a sound perspective?
I think getting on the show was just right place, right time, or really dumb luck. I was working on another show at a different facility, and I got a call from Jay Rubin, who's the head of sound at Postworks New York, and he said, I've got a pilot. There's these guys down in South Carolina. They have a show. They need to bring it up. I don't recall him telling me that it was Danny McBride. And he said, look, 6 days of edit and do a temp, and they'll take the pilot, and we'll see what happens. I wasn't going to do it, but then he called. He said, well, look, you're HBO approved, because I'd done another HBO show, and I don't know if he couldn't find somebody else at that point. But anyways, I said, okay, fine, I'll do it. I'll come in, I'll do it. And one of the best decisions I've ever made. You know, the show shows up. There's this this mass baptism in a wave pool that gets turned on as the first scene. And it was funny. I was laughing, cracking up like crazy. And then the next day I had the spotting session over Zoom. And the way that Danny and his team had their Zoom camera, there was 4 of them, and they were so far back in the framing, and they were way off mic, and I think it took me like 10 or 15 minutes before I realized I was actually talking to Danny. Which, anyways, I spent the 6 days throwing everything at it. You know, we did the mix, and then they took it away, and eight months later, it got picked up, and thankfully they came back around and decided to use me, and you know that was the start. Each season and each show kind of throws something at you that you're not quite expecting. It's been a pleasure and an excitement, a joy to figure out what the heck it's going to be next that they're going to give you.
Well, hold on to that idea of the curveball that was thrown at you for this latest season.
Sure.
We're going to get to that in a second. Daniel, do you want to talk about how you got on Pee-wee himself and maybe what your previous knowledge of Pee-wee was?
Sure, yeah. I was brought on by director Matt Wolf, I think somewhere towards the end of the previous project we were working on that we finished up. I worked on his Biosphere documentary, and I'm not sure if he was starting pre-production for Pee-wee at the end of that, or it was really close on the heels of that, but he knew that was coming, so we had finished that up and had a previous working relationship, and because it was a very long production period for Pee-wee, so it was actually, I think, maybe a couple years, or at least many months of just the occasional phone update of how the interviews were going and how the process was going until I was actually saw it cut after they had reached the end of their production.
Well, Matt, the director you just mentioned, he is a character within the documentary. Is that what he's like in real life?
Totally. Oh yeah, totally. That's him. That's he's 100% playing himself. Unlike Paul or Pee-wee.
Nicholas, back to you, the idea of the curveball in Gemstones. The first episode of season 4 takes place like 200 years before the rest of the series.
Exactly.
It takes place in the Old West. It's a shoot 'em up Western kind of thing. What did you think when you first saw that one? Because it is basically the exact opposite. The main series is about excess and gluttony, kind of. And then this episode is about gritty and dirt.
Yeah, I mean, you have these this megachurch family that John Goodman is the head of, and his 3 children want to become more want to take over to be the pastors or the ministers as Goodman starts stepping back, and they're all sort of flawed characters, and you're right, the wealth is kind of obscene. The interesting thing about the show is that while they make fun of these characters and all their flaws, they don't make fun of religion. Their belief in God, that's not funny. That's not the point of where the comedy goes. It's all their failings as people and the ridiculous situations they get into. So throughout the course of these 4 seasons, these 4 years, we've had flashbacks where they would jump back to where all those characters were kids. They started out extremely young in the first season, and as the show was shot over 8 years, actually. So they actually grew up over the time, and they're pretty old teenagers here in season 4. So we have done these jump back in time once a season already, and you see a bit more of what Goodman was like, Goodman's character Eli was, and how that he brought the church up. But yeah, in this one here, we're going back to the Civil War in the South behind the Confederate lines, and we follow Bradley Cooper basically he's the first gemstone to become a minister, and how he goes about from being a scoundrel to or an unreputable person and getting caught in the middle of the Civil War and then finding his way towards the end. So it was definitely a departure. I had a hint that it was coming. Justin Bray, our picture editor and one of the producers, gave me a call and said, listen, Danny's got, this one's going to be a little different. Danny's spending a little extra time on this. He wants it to be more cinematic than the other episodes. And that was kind of the direction that was given to everybody on the production, because it was shot a little bit different than a standard Gemstones episode. You had a lot more perspectives splits, a little bit more time hanging on shots that maybe you don't normally get on a half-hour comedy show, which Gemstones is. Although I would say it's not your standard comedy show, even in and of itself. I don't know, monster trucks, locusts, motorcycle jousting. I don't know. It's just, every episode they throw something different at us, as I said. But so this one was, I'm waiting for them to cut forward in time, and they just stay with us with Bradley Cooper's character all the way through. It was refreshing and it was interesting, and it kind of gave me a reset on how I approached the show. One, having a little bit more time. 2, the way it was shot. My co-editor, our music editor, Michael Brake, said the other day, gemstone episode that was ever, and it's perfect. I'm probably butchering the way he said it, but it remains true. So
I like your sentence. It's a story of how he becomes a minister. The word becomes is doing a lot of work in that sentence. Like, he doesn't really become a minister. But
I mean, that kind of works for the whole series, though, as well as like what you hope a minister or a pastor would be and what they actually are. With the current Gemstones, with Danny's character and all, money is key, presence is key, being popular, all that stuff. They, the 7 deadly sins, they probably hit in every single one. So it's just, it's in the bloodline, I guess, is how they're playing it. So
he definitely earns it.
Yeah.
So speaking of owning it, maybe that is not what Paul Reubens does in Pee-wee himself. We constantly get to see kind of stuff that I was not, in at least Paul's mind at least, I think meant for air. Like while they're setting up camera, we see him talking with the director and kind of messing with him. And he's constantly kind of playing with the idea of if he's telling the truth or not. And one of the reasons that this technique works so well is because the dialogue of the interview with Pee-wee is the most crystal clear dialogue I've ever heard. Nick actually was talking about this earlier, that it's like he's in an anechoic chamber. I'm not even sure if I'm saying that word right, but like it's a crystal clean dialogue track. Do you want to talk about what it was like when you got it, how you approach that? Because there's 2 episodes of Pee-wee himself. In the first one, he's probably like 95% of the dialogue. And in the second one, he disappears a little bit in the back half, but which is explained within the plot of the show. But he's carrying a heavy load. Do you want to talk about how you tackled that?
I really appreciate the compliment. I guess the secret is, a great recording to start with, and a great location, and a location with provenance, and a location he felt comfortable shooting in, and a generous director to lead him through the process. But as far as my process goes with the dialogue track, I think I went out on a little bit of a limb with this one and didn't use any noise reduction or room tone, or didn't really add any bells and whistles to Paul. I wanted Paul just to be himself because, well, yeah, I guess it's the name of the film. I didn't think that far ahead when I was making that decision, but, I did spend a lot of time really fiddling with his dialogue track. And of course the dialogue edit is, impeccable. My editor Ian just knocked it out of the park and did a super clean edit. As far as the mix goes, I really did spend a lot of time just sitting with his tone and just feeling out where his voice sits in his body, and I just wanted to let him speak, so I decided to leave it completely unadorned. And yeah, it was my first time not using noise reduction on anything, which was really scary, actually, because it can be more work. It felt like cheating in a way, but in hindsight, it's the hard way. so I'm glad to hear that it paid off.
Yeah, well, I mean, I watched it on headphones, so maybe it's a different experience in speakers, but I found it extremely clean. When I've done a documentary or approaching it, I'm always like, oh, okay, let's get an air tone to kind of move, match things together, make things sit nicer, and that's my bed. And as I was listening to your track, there isn't that hiss or that little warm tone or something under there. It's just his voice, and his voice just pulls you in. So you can't see my face, but when you said no room tone, that made sense to me. But you said no sort of noise reduction, whatever. I was like, wow, I'm surprised. I mean, kudos to you and to the location recordist, whose name I'm blanking on at the moment. But that's a fantastic, Johnny, a fantastic job between the two of you to make something so clean and pristine. He's such a strong character. He's such a strong presence, Paul Reubens, that he just pulls you right in. Yeah, I was sort of mesmerized watching it. Yeah, it was fantastic. And so your choices that you made just lended to that experience of watching it for me.
I appreciate that, Nick. I feel like the rules kind of showed me what they are at the very beginning of the film, because the first couple scenes are cut. We're letting Paul talk, and then it's a hard cut to black, and then we're picking it back up. And it's a kind of picture cutting style. The picture editor, Damien, apparently is calling it's verite, which is an interesting use of the term that I'd never heard before in terms of an interview that specifically shot new. It really resonated because it helped me realize that we're treating it equally with all the other footage, all the other archival, all the other verite. Adding extraneous stuff to it fit that ethos.
It's interesting because normally when we want something to feel raw and intense, we think, leave the hiss in, let us feel the natural what it was. Now, I think from what you're saying is there wasn't any of that to begin with. But it's so clean. But in this context, it feels super raw and intense because of that cleanliness, which is kind of the opposite of what I normally think.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I don't know I don't know how much clicks or pops or, mouth smacks he had that Ian cleaned up, but it felt like he had none of that. So again, another fantastic job doing the dialogue cleanup.
Thank you. Yeah, just elbow grease on that end,
But it is interesting what you say, the show dictates the sound that you're going to create. And yeah, I feel like over the years that definitely I've been noticing that what you have, and then of course your marching orders from your show director, but those two things, what you can do sometimes, it's just like, okay, I see my path. It's already been aligned for me and I've just got to go with it. And that's great when the showrunner and that lines up exactly. And on the few cases that it doesn't line up, then you're in a bit of a trouble. But thankfully, that's not the case for Gemstones.
The way you said that, Nick, I'm sensing that like you're charting some kind of like trajectory of that's going in a certain direction more recently, or has that always been how you felt regarding like adapting to the project?
I imagine probably when I was younger and maybe first starting out, after I'd edited for a lot of other supervisors over the years on a lot of other shows, and then I started getting the call to be the supervisor and then later the re-recording mixer, I would see all the decisions that those supervisors were making or the sound designers and what those exciting parts were how they got excited about it and what they brought to it. And I wasn't always sitting at the mix to find out where the reaction, the conversation that they would have with the showrunner. So in my mind, it's just like, they made it. It was amazing. I'm going to bring the same energy and passion when I come to this project, and I'm going to, maybe it's probably being young and maybe being a little foolish and headstrong. And so, you kind of get corrected a couple of times. And so my viewpoint has switched to, I am here to help the filmmaker, the showrunner, tell his or her vision and to support them in what capacity makes sense. Some of those shows, the marching orders are extremely clear. I want A and B and C, and you give me A, B, and C, and you do that to the best ability, and they're happy. And there's other showrunners that are like, I'm thinking A, B, and C. What do you think? And you go, I like A and B. I wouldn't do C. I would go D and E. And a conversation happens, and sometimes something magical comes out of that. And so I think once I made that switch in my brain, and it probably wasn't a 100% switch, and I was there. I think it was probably back and forth a few times before it clicked in. I think provided that schedules allow, that you can have a fantastic relationship with a showrunner or picture editor or whoever it is that you are, director, when you can have that dialogue. And if that's not what the show is, finding the fun way to work within, I guess I call it like a sandbox. Your sandbox is a certain size and certain depth, and you have to work within that. And you can make something really fantastic within those parameters. You just have to set yourself up. Okay, this is where I'm working.
I imagine it's kind of like a perfect storm for you right now with episode 1 of a 4th season of something that you're on, with all the trust that's been built up, and you and your crew, given that sandbox being what it is, you could really make something great.
I was talking about this with Danny the other day, where he was saying, when he first came up for the mixes, he spent a lot more time with us in the mix, going over stuff and figuring stuff out. And thankfully, before he came, Justin, or again, our picture editor, he would come up, and, he and Danny work extremely close in the edit down in South Carolina as they're putting together. And there are a lot of decisions that they've made. And so their path has been laid out quite well. Anyway, so at the beginning, the first season, getting to know each other, it's getting to know what they wanted, the pace of the show, how he wanted to approach things. And so, on the last season, he'd come up, he'd watch it, and on a good episode, he'd have one note. that happened 1 or 2 times on the 9 episodes, and other times it's a handful, and they're all just like, well, let's just try it out. And he was sort of laughing. I take it as a very nice compliment. He's like, why am I even flying up here? At that point. So
that's when
but I'm glad he does, because he brings a fantastic energy when he comes, and you get to hear what he's doing, and it helps you for the next episode as well.
Man, what you said made me think of something my friend Bobby Johansson, the ADR mixer, said to me more than once. He's like, I'd be sitting in session, and I'd speak up, give a note or something, and he'd go, "You're gonna get your pee-pee whacked, man. You're gonna get your pee-pee whacked one of these days." And it took me a long time to figure out what he meant. And it's yet to happen in ADR, but it definitely has happened in the mix and in the sound design. I made a similar shift, in my approach. I don't like doing work without the director or the editor or somebody there. I really just like collaborating in person and doing it and exploring together. I set aside the idea that there's this thing where I'm going to give you something. We're going to make something together, And since I made that mental shift, it's really helped just everybody.
To do work before they show up. Is that what
I'll prep, but I think the meat of the work, at least talking about it together, or if not experimenting together.
Yeah, I like that as well. I've done so much TV recently. That's a luxury that I've not necessarily had, but also I like your view on that. But I'm also one that I like to have things as lined up as I possibly can beforehand, to have it in exactly what I think is the right way, but knowing it's going to change, but at least putting my best foot forward. And if I'm flying by my seat of my pants, that's, I guess, an uncomfortable position for me sometimes, depending on the energy in the room. So if the more prepared I can be, the more in control I feel in a situation that you're not really in control of, I guess. So
no, you totally have a good point. I definitely like a little bit of randomness in my process, and as time goes on, less and less risk, but it's still it's definitely exciting, even to the point I think some of my most rewarding experiences are going to a location to do some impromptu recording, because you really don't know what you're going to get, or what the vibe is going to be like, or if there's going to be any chemistry. I do enjoy that. I do enjoy that feeling.
Did you find in this project with your director talking off mic, when it came to his voice and his presence, did you have to adjust how your process worked, or was he, not necessarily from the technical point of view, but you could talk to that also as to how well his voice was recorded, but just in how he wanted to feel that presence or that interaction between the two of them?
I think I know what you're saying. You know, like, I don't know the full backstory because I wasn't there while they were cutting picture, but I do know that, like, everyone around Matt knew that he was a really important part of this film, a crucial part of the film. And, like, we all knew that he was in the film slowly as we progressed, and we kept telling him. he did begin to realize that, and it's fascinating, you know, because there's a relationship happening there between the director and the subject that's completely fascinating little tangent to, like, little side plot, you know, that's happening. So
there's a great little argument over if there's trust between them. That's kind of out of context with anything else, but within the whole project, it makes sense. Daniel, I wanted to ask you a quick question about your approach to archive footage. I've worked on projects where they come to me and they say, I want all the archive stuff cleaned up. I want it to all to sound kind of the same. And then I've worked on other projects with lots of archive material where they say, I want the old stuff to sound old. I want it to feel like it's from a long time ago. How did you approach this? Because you're dealing with archive stuff all the way back to the 70s, I believe.
And further, if you count still images, which I think occasionally we did augment with sound. Again, approach is what it is. I guess we were armed with, I think it was 2 copies at least of each archive source, like one that was cleaned up and restored, actually baked in an oven. A lot of the VH types were baked and then transferred, and then another copy that was before that. So I actually had choices if we wanted to play it dirty or play it clean, so to speak. We really used all of it. We used good sounds, we used bad sounds. I guess that's the big part of my philosophy that I would want to touch on in regards to how the archival works is I just really love shitty sounds as much as I love good sounds. So having a director who would embrace that with me and also be allergic to really cheesy stuff like noise and projector sound effects and stuff. Just like to have some hard boundaries because, you know, sound designers, it's like, oops, you know, accidentally picked a really cheesy sound. It happens, you know, and he gives a very quick reaction, which is super nice.
So, Nick, Gemstones was obviously produced to watch every Sunday over a period of time, but other people that maybe don't have the service on television and are streaming it, binge watching happens. And it has one of the craziest hard turns ever. When you come out of episode 1, that's all grit and dirt and gunshots, and you go into the first scene of episode 2, which is them rehearsing a ridiculous musical with jetpacks on. It's really bananas.
Yes.
Do you want to talk about like just the musical scenes in general in Gemstones? They have to be a beast to tackle.
Yeah, no, I'm glad you brought that up. You know, our composer, Joey Stevens, he's fantastic. He brings such an amazing energy. He gets everybody, every character has a theme that runs through that he picks up and he runs with, and he's able to weave it throughout the entire season. So Michael Brake was saying that the Bible in the first episode has a theme, which then will reoccur throughout this 4th season as you go along. And the Gemstones theme is built out of the very ending of the first episode, and it's just a nice way to sort of tie everything together. So Joey does a fantastic job with that. And then we have DeVoe Yates as our music supervisor, and he brings all the best needle drops that fit the show perfectly. And of course, Danny's picking stuff and Justin is picking stuff as well. But the 5 of them as a team create a fantastic journey that the music is going through. In a lot of cases, I come in and I'm like, okay, how do I, doing sound design, sound effects work and loop group and technical dialogue, how do we make this fit with what they've done? Sometimes it's so easy and it just drops right in. In season 1, he has the song Misbehaving with the clogging with Amy, Leah's sister. You know, that song was so great, and the live performances, and we had all the production tracks, and I think we took every single microphone we could. We had Foley that covers it. And that, I remember being a challenging one. How can we make sure we're getting the feet correct and the energy of the crowd there? And so that first season, all 3 of them were in the room with us while we were mixing. So Joey was there, DeVoe was there, and Michael's there. You know, you can go back and forth. Some people are critical of having a composer in the mixing room while it's happening because it can bring you down a different path. But Joey was great. He definitely stood up for his music. I think it made my work better in terms of trying to figure out how to work with his. And I'm sorry, Martin Schemborg is our re-recording mixer. He works with, I handle the effects and Foley, and Martin handles the music and the dialogue. And everyone kind of figuring out that first season how to work together, how to make the music feel where Joey wanted it. And it was a lovely collaboration. And that part of the show kind of became a magical thing, and I looked forward for the songs and how I can put my stuff against it. So for this jetpack here, we have this humongous big musical number. They're coming out and singing. Our three main characters are doing their dance. The band is playing behind them. And at a certain point, they go behind a screen and they come out and they have these jetpacks on that power up. They lift up, but they can't control them. And so then they're flying all over the place and crashing into things. And it's ridiculous. Yeah, that was another one early on that Justin called. Danny wants to know what the jetpacks are going to sound like. And so I go to YouTube and see what an actual jetpack looks like and try to figure out, okay, that's a lot of air noise. So we've got to find some other stuff to figure out to make it.
Sounds like a hairdryer,
yeah,
basically.
Yeah, exactly. So
in real life.
Exactly. So there is that element in it, but how can we have little computer, like they've got the flashing lights on the background and almost like sort of jet propulsion set. I went back and I looked at Iron Man because the picture editor had put some Iron Man sound effects in it as a temp. And I was like, okay, that was a good placeholder. How do we figure out something else to go in there? And it's interesting because there's so much spinning around or zipping around. I have the Atmos renderer running at this point. This season, I'm trying to make the most of that soundscape, that technology that came about in season 2 on this when we first switched over. And it's like, okay, I'm going to use this to as much as I possibly can to make it as fun as I can for those small percentage of people that actually have home Atmos. But yeah, it's a total different feel from episode 1 where I'm working with bugs, birds, horses, human voices, and muskets. And that's your sandbox there. And how do you make the most of that?
Although there is one amazingly epic shot near the beginning where the camera pans across the whole battlefield. It's quite a long shot. There's probably 50 actors doing different things within the shot. And then a close-up of someone exploding and their leg flying off. That's an epic shot right there.
That was the first thing that they sent to me. Justin sent it up a few months early before I was officially going to come on the show. And so that was actually lovely to have the time. I sat down and I'm trying to figure out, okay, the Union Army is behind you. You never see the Union Army. You just see their cannonballs coming in or their bullets hitting the dirt in front of the soldiers or hitting the soldiers. And that was a lot of fun coming more from the television side of things to sit down and get to play and figure out how to tell that story with the audio as you can and space it out and pinpoint where the viewer is going to focus next. That was great fun.
Like, I know a lot of it is like having, like you said, having all this stuff available like at your fingertips, but like I thought the mix just had this incredible sense of rhythm and like this dance of like an interplay between all the sounds relative, to the dialogue, of course, being, the story being king, but like when do you start thinking about that on the scale of like your brain being like, oh, a bird, oh, a horse, oh, a thing, like from that on one end of the spectrum to like furiously spotting each sample, planned out in advance? Like where does that start and end for you?
Well, I'll tell you the two, because there's the battle scenes, that's one, and then there's the quiet scenes, right? I guess that's the other. Mm-hmm. And so for the battle scenes is first time I got it, they didn't have everything, and they had 90% of what you finally see in the shot. And there's visual effects in there, of course, for the stunt of the guy getting thrown in the air, but some of the soldiers in the backgrounds, far in the backgrounds, that's digitally added in after the fact, so that all the close actors are right up there. And then I had a rough idea there was going to be others back there. But for that shot, I covered everything. And then it was just playing it down and thinking to myself, now I want you to focus here. And then there's a shot where the Confederate cannon tilts down and then it blasts forward and the dirt spits up in front of you and it's big. And the dirt came later in the editing process. As soon as I put that in from where the cannonball exploded, it's like, that sort of changed it up as to how I wanted things to play in that way. And We hadn't recorded the group yet for that. I wanted temp yells as I was building it. So I went back in season 3 we have a militia in that. Dan Fink runs that loop group with Daphne Gaines. And I sat there and I placed where I wanted yells to come out specifically to move that story along. And so then when we had the actual group, I was able to say, Deb, I'm looking for this idea here. And then she went far beyond what I had done and gave some amazing thing. And then Martin took it, and I'm gonna sing both Deb and Martin's praises for a moment. She cued every single individual soldiers in the camp with the nurses, and she was very select on what they had to do. And the loop group did a fantastic job.
The loop group is staggeringly awesome. I am such a fanboy of Great Loop, and it's amazing what you guys did.
They knocked it out of the park. And the second battle scene, Martin does this fantastic thing when he's mixing it, where he's got this interesting, very short reverb, and then he does this little sort of pan and up and down movement for the soldiers yelling as the battle's going. And it's brilliant, and it's beautiful all in itself.
I wanted to ask you about that delay. That delay is sick. Like, that delay is, like, constantly, like, moving, like, in time, and, like, it's also getting, like, a little more stereo every now and then, too. It's like, how did you find the time to do that? That's a whole nother thing.
Yeah, and when we were mixing that, of course, I'm in my own little world of, like, trying to get the horses and the guns and the explosions and all that. And he's doing that unbeknownst to me, and we're hearing it all together, and of course your ears and eyes are pulled certain ways, and that in retrospect, listening back to it, it's like, damn, Martin, that was so good.
Sounds like the answer is yes. It's hard work and planning and then playing with it at the end.
But I will tell you, for the shots when the soldiers are marching before that second battle scene, kudos to our DP and what Danny thought, and then how Justin structured the story. But in a comedy, half-hour comedy, they gave us almost close to a minute of 12 shots of different perspectives of that forest of the men marching. And nobody says anything. And that's a feature thing there, that's time. And within that, I can put this woodpecker here. I can put this other bird here. I'm going to take the time, because everyone knows it's a pain to get sounds to the wide sometimes, while mixing it out. I'm going to figure out a way to put some stuff in there and make it active and make it move. And
yeah, I totally heard like a raven flying to its nest at some point.
And the other nerdy thing there was I went online and I looked at like what are birds that are native to the Southeast. And I was like, I'm going to try and only use birds that are native to the Southeast and what are the bugs that are there. Yeah, and so I went and bought some more libraries that had just it was recorded in those areas. And I'm sure there's stuff that isn't native at the end of the day, but I was trying.
My little trick is I put right at the beginning, or very close to the beginning of the film, I put the state bird of the location, just as like an apology to all the ornithologists out there.
I love that.
That's awesome.
I love that. That's... Anyway, so that was the longest. The short answer is I spent a lot of time, and I was into that episode more so than I probably should have been, and just tried to figure out where can I place something that will draw the eye, help this, not get in the way of the story, make it interesting.
Yeah, I mean, that's the end result, right? It's like super masterfully done. Like you're playing with people's kind of like attention and attention span and like where their mind is going so well. Because like you're kind of towing the line between, oh, it is boring to listen to now. Oh, it's super, something just tipped me off that something interesting might happen like a frame from now, Yeah. It's like, that's the timeline that we're thinking on.
Yeah. I mean, I never discussed it with Danny. I told him about it. I said, when at the beginning in the church, when the preacher mentions the war, I put in a little crow call, very faint. And then when the first soldier's dying and Bradley's sitting there and he's not doing a good job being a preacher and he passes, I put a crow call. And then the second one, the same thing. And then at the very end, after he's found Jesus, or he's finally done right by the men before they're executed, but then there's the crow. I guess they had a crow. They had a wrangler, brought the animal, and it's sitting on the body and it flies away. That's like, okay, there's the anchor. That's the payoff for all these other spots. And that's, and again, probably no one else is going to notice that. But in my process of thinking, it's like, what makes this interesting? What'll make a dynamic soundtrack?
I think everybody notices it. If they don't notice it cognitively, they notice it like with their tummy. And there's like a similar thing that I had to deal with, like, with the documentaries, right? Like you're like towing a line between, like sometimes we're going into storytelling mode, or sometimes we're going into memory mode, or flashback mode, or psychological mode. And on the docs, there's like such a fine little line that when you cross it, you just have to do it just right, because in the doc, it's just dialogue straight up the center. Anything that tweaks the stereo image or anything that comes in, even if it's a little piece of noise or something, can take you out as opposed to drawing you in. So it's like a leading motion.
you are really delicate when you would use the historical footage. I mean, when you do the Pee-wee thing, it's the Pee-wee's footage from the Playhouse, then it's big, it's in your face. But then when you're doing the other stuff, it was interesting. It's like, it's not pulling me away, but it's giving me this little bed in which I'm sitting in as the story tells. And I was very conscious of that decision that you made. You had said before, like, don't hear the camera purr for historical, but you have something there, and it allows you to continue to flow through with the story. And I thought it was really tastefully done. And my short answer to that, it was just right. And I'm sure that took a long time to find that voice in the soundtrack on how to play that.
Yeah, I was expecting a revelation with like the question that I asked you earlier, but it's literally just the answer is just like hard work and prepping and then playing with the little instrument that you built, you know? My goal with the archival anyways was to do exactly that, so I'm glad that's coming along. I just wanted to just give it, like, if you're thinking about like graphics, I just wanted to give it like a little bit of bump mapping. Like, it's still flat, but it has a little bit of shading so that it makes you think that you could see it from a few different angles, you know?
That's a fascinating way to think about it. That makes total sense.
Because like film is, when you watch film, right, it's 3D. It's like several layers of color, and we don't get that anymore. So I want to put that back in.
How was your director when you were presenting those elements to him? Was that an immediate buy-in on his part, or was it a discussion, or did you guys?
I mean, it was excitement at first, and just like saying, he just said, "Go, try it out, and show me." Show me is probably my favorite direction. So, so we did that, and definitely some stuff had some revisions and tweaks, but a lot of it was just like, keep going or try something else. Matt was very strong reactions to stuff, which I adore. He's also a Taurus, so it's also very just like, you know, very direct, and he'll let you know if it's not the thing that it's got to be.
I worked with a director once that used the phrase context or frying pan. So when he wanted something just like a bed underneath that just give it context, just give it context. And then when he wanted something hit hard, he's hit it with the frying pan. So like it's context versus frying pan. And that's always stuck in my head when I'm editing and mixing. Just like, oh, okay, is this context or frying pan? And there's not very many frying pans. You use frying pan too often, then it doesn't work anymore. But sometimes you can find a spot for a frying pan, and it's really, really satisfying.
It's good to have parameters, right? And I do like knowing that, like, the outer bounds of what I'm doing. It's a great way to describe that.
Tim, when you're doing a lot of animation work that you do, would you say that where those parameters are for animation?
There's more frying pan in animation. Yeah.
There's like the whole thing is sort of like step up a half a step, or you know, you tune the guitar up a half step on where those are versus
Yeah, the frying pan is a much more used tool in animation than in live action, but it's still, you got to find the right spots for it. Again, if you use the frying pan too much, there is no frying pan anymore. You know what I mean? If every hit is hard, then there's no hard hits anymore. That's all our jobs, is figuring out the right moments to push things and the right moments pull things back, and then even the moments when you don't do anything, which makes it fun. I'm going to wrap it back to something we talked about earlier. We had talked about the idea of letting the show tell you what it needs, kind of thing. And when you're young and you're first in doing this, maybe the first time you're a sound supervisor, you have your first success. The next project, you suddenly try and fit it into what you did in the previous one. And that never works.
Yes.
That never works.
Yes.
And it's a weird thing where as you get more experience, you learn to let the things talk to you more, as you guys were saying earlier, instead of trying to put you into it. Now, obviously, there are times when that is fun to get your own little things in there, but it takes experience to learn when to do that kind of thing. And it's an interesting thing that you guys are talking about.
You know, you can also apply that to the mistakes that you made or the challenges because this job is creative, of course, but then there's also the organization of it or the interpersonal aspects of who you're working with, and certain things that might go great on a certain project with a certain crew based on the parameters of what they have to do within that, you know, or the challenges of that show. A lot of different variables, but something that went really well or something that didn't go very well, you're like, well, I'm not going to make that mistake with the schedule next time. And you suddenly try to apply it to your next show, and it has no bearing whatsoever. And you got to like, okay, stop, rewind, let the show tell you how to dictate it. I think you're spot on with that, Tim. And it applies to the creative and the organizational and just the nuts and bolts of making what we do.
Yeah, Nick, you're farther along on that journey than I am. So you said it perfectly. I really don't have anything to add. My only advice would be just like find the tricks that work for you. Like for me, I just know that I approach those situations so much better. They're all just learning and growth situations anyways. But just be in a good mood, be in a good headspace, and that's all I can do to help myself deal with the situations.
I find I learn the most on the mistakes that, when you make the mistakes, and the bigger the mistakes, the more you learn. And sometimes it's painful. But so my feeling
Don't
now
get your
is
pee-pee whacked.
Yeah, exactly. Or it's like you make a mistake big enough to learn something important, but not big enough to get you fired. I think that's, that you can.
It's a fine line.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, okay, not something that the director's like, oh, that was silly, do this. And you're like, okay, good. And then you make it not like you're a complete nincompoop. Get the heck out of here.
Unfortunately, there's only one way to find out.
That's right. Yeah. Where that line, you only know that line once you've crossed it and it's too late. Yeah.
Well, on that note, congratulations for both of you on your Emmy nominations. They're both well-deserved. Thanks for talking to me today. It was great to meet you, Dan, and it was great to have you back on, Nicholas.
Thank you so much, Tim. It was a pleasure to be back and great to talk to you again. And congratulations, Dan. It's a great show. It's a great work.
Thanks, guys. It was a blast.
Wow, that was a really great talk about the sound work on two really great shows. Congrats to them all on their Emmy nominations. I have a bunch of really wonderful episodes coming out in the near future, so please keep checking in. We'll talk to you soon. Sound Idea's highly anticipated mid-year sale has been extended for a limited time. Unlock 50% off on thousands of premium recordings from epic cinematic sounds to authentic ambiances. They're ideal for any creative project. This applies to all Sound Idea's proprietary libraries. With over 45 years of experience, Sound Ideas delivers audio trusted by professionals worldwide. Head over to soundideas.com to learn more. Tonebenders is produced by me, Timothy Muirhead. Theme music is by Jim Guthrie. You can reach me via email through info@tonebenderspodcast.com. Follow Tonebenders on Instagram to stay on top of new episodes. If you like the show, you can help us out by spreading the word to your friends and colleagues. Or leave us a tip. Just go to tonebenderspodcast.com and click support.